Hey everybody, I'm joined today with Geoff Palmer. He's the owner of Clean Machine. We've known each other for a while. I met him at Plant-Based World Expo, and he's very knowledgeable. And I've been following him on Facebook. And recently, he did a video about omega-3s and DHA. And I was taking it at the time, and he did a video about how that maybe I shouldn't be taking it. It's not so good for you as you think. So I'd like to start off with that, and then I want to talk about a few other supplements he recommends. But yeah, can you tell our listeners? Well, first tell us about yourself, and then tell our listeners about what you find about omega-3.
Yeah, so I started my vegan journey 36 years ago, and back then I was a biopsych major in college, so I was doing reading a lot of studies about nutrition and how it affects biology. So biopsych is looking at your body's physiology, the whole physiology, not just your brain, and how it affects mood and behavior and other parts of your body. And looking at physiology back in my college days, it was very clear that we're an integrated, systematic type of organism, like most organisms. And it wasn't linear. It wasn't just poke this one thing and that works. And it's not clockwork as they used to approach science at. It's systemic. So there's lots of different interchanging, connecting parts to it. So what I found amazing was that when I was doing some research on serotonin is the mood enhancer in our brain. Serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, are the most common antidepressant on the market. So what they do is help the body utilize more of the serotonin. Well, I was looking at some different chemicals that we were studying, and one of those chemicals, I was like, oh, where does that chemical come? It was a serotonin inhibitor. So it actually inhibited the brain's ability to utilize serotonin. And I was like, what is that? And I tracked it back down, and forgive me for not knowing the exact studies anymore. I was in college in the 80s, so quite a time ago, but found out that chemical was actually released by animals when they're in a fear state. So when animals get slaughtered, whether it's chickens, pigs, cows, even fish, they release chemicals that inhibit their body's ability to feel good, which makes sense because you're in a fear state, you're in a survival state, you need extreme focus to try to survive, right? Because you're being slaughtered, you're being killed. So the body shuts down the body's ability. Well, when we consume that chemical, our brain uses a different chemical for a similar process, but our brain is kind of tricked into thinking, oh, let's shut down serotonin too. And I was like, wow, by eating the animal that has been stressed to the point of fearing for its life, it's releasing chemicals into the flesh. We're consuming that, and that's actually inhibiting our own brain's ability to be happy. And I'm like, wow, we're literally biochemically taking on the fear of the animal, and it's preventing us from being happy, taking on their pain, taking on their fear of death. And I'm like, oh my God. So as I got into, became vegan, and I said, okay, there's gotta be more deeper explanations out there. And I was looking at most of the research over the last 20, 30 years, and almost all of it was based on omnivores, which is people eating an animal-centric diet. And I'm like, okay, but the body goes through changes, physiological changes, microbiome changes, even epigenetic changes when you change your diet. And this much is really clear now. But back in the early 80s, when I was looking at it, I said, there's got to be some good science out there that at least indicates that when you change a plant-based diet, physiological needs change, nutritional needs change. And so I have been spending most of my adult life trying to find out how, when you change to a plant-based diet, this changes our requirements. So with all of this research mostly done on omnivores, those eating a meat-based diet, their physiology had changed to try to adapt to that diet. And what happens when you change to a plant-based diet is your physiology changes to an upgraded position where you don't require those things. So, I looked to try to address this and looking at proteins, because obviously I was a swimmer, junior Olympic swimmer in high school and college, and then I just kept working out from there. I loved athletics. I loved physical fitness. And so I said, okay, well, if I know this diet is better for my health, it's better for the environment, it's better for the animals, it's better on almost every single way you look at it. It's better for our economy, it's better for our healthcare, it's better for our taxes. Everywhere it affects positively, it has to do the same thing nutritionally as well. So most of the nutritional science was saying just the opposite, though, that you need fish oil, that you need animal protein. So I think, there's other doctors out there and stuff, plant-based doctors and other people that have done a great job of showing that you don't need the animal protein. And as a matter of fact, the animal protein is structured with higher methionine and cysteine that actually do damage and can lead to feeding cancer cells, stimulating cancer growth, and causing heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, and obesity, almost all the major killers of people. And so that much is clear on the protein side. But what really hasn't been addressed too well is the omega-3 side. And this whole concept, and I'm sorry to say that even most of the vegan doctors out there are still telling people, buying into the you got to get DHA and you got to get EPA in their preformed source, like from fish, but wow, now we have algae, right? So, okay,
Right.
so let's
I
talk
think
about.
Dr. Bernard might have upgraded, though. I heard him recently on a podcast say that there's the verdict still out there, and he wasn't 100%
Finally, and there's
so
a few
that was a good
doctors,
sign.
there's a handful of doctors questioning. Dr. Clapper is actually questioning it too, as well as Dr. Sabatino, both plant-based doctors, vegan doctors who I highly respect. And look, I love all of them, but we need to update our view of it. So let's take a look at it. So when you ask people, what are the 2 essential fatty acids, which means essential meaning we have to get them from our diet, right? Because other things that are non-essential, we can take from our diet and break them down and turn them into different things. So our body can make its own, right? So what are the 2? And most people, if you ask them, what are the 2 essential fatty acids, they'll say EPA and DHA. And that's totally wrong. It is incorrect. Both EPA and DHA are non-essential. Our body can make its own EPA and DHA from ALA, only found in plants. The other essential fatty acid is LA, which is omega-6. So the omega-3, the only essential omega-3 that humans need, and you can Google it, the only essential omega-3 is ALA, because our body cannot make that. We have to get that from food. And that ALA can convert. So most people think, okay, there's 2 omega-3s, and that's not right. Some people understand there's actually 3 omega-3s, and that's quite not right either. There's actually 6 of them. So it starts in the chain of conversion. ALA is at the very top, and it can convert down into all of the other 5. So it goes ALA, SDA, ETA, then EPA, DPA, and at the very bottom, DHA. So any of those top 5 can convert down to DHA. So DHA can be converted by 5 different precursor forms. So our body can create DHA lots of different ways. So it's the least important of the omega-3s, which is totally opposite of what people are buying into a fear of. Okay, so yeah, so there are 6 levels of different changes. Now, each one of those changes, when body changes from ALA to SDA and SDA, it requires an enzyme. So those enzymes, elongase or reductase enzymes, increase the size of the chain, with the DHA being the longest chain at the bottom. So that's how our body regulates it. So our body regulates these enzyme production by epigenetics. So we have a gene that either turns on or turns off basically when it needs to produce that enzyme. So when it turns on, it produces the enzyme that causes the conversion. And when it sees it has enough of a certain, like SDA or EPA or DHA, then it turns it off. As a matter of fact, if you take supplemental DHA, it can actually trigger the body to shut down the enzymes that would convert EPA down to DHA. Now, what happens if you're consuming food that has a lot of ALA and you already have converted down to EPA, and then you all of a sudden just throw a chunk of DHA in there, the body says, whoa, I didn't produce that. Where did all that come from? So it epigenetically, it turns off that gene that produces the enzyme and stops the enzymes from converting EPA down to DHA. And then EPA can actually start to build up because it's all coming down to EPA and stopping. So what you're doing is causing a logjam, an overproduction of EPA. Now,
what happens in that case with EPA?
Yeah, really good study. And I'll read right from the study because I've got it pulled up in front of me. This study looked at the balance of EPA to DHA. So this study, it was from the Cambridge University, and it was published in the British Journal of Nutrition. So what they showed was the ratio was really important. So they found that if you had a higher EPA to DHA, that could be a good thing if you had like diabetes or cardiovascular disease because it reduced C-reactive protein. Okay, that's a good thing. So you want more EPA than DHA, right? Well, they also have another study that showed higher DHA levels meant actually the other way around, rather, increased blood pressure. So if you had a high blood pressure, this could make things worse. So which is it? So they were trying to figure out what is the proper ratio. And the proper ratio is whatever you need right in that moment at that specific time. So the ratios change. Sometimes we need higher DHA than EPA, and sometimes we need it just the other way around to treat a specific disease state or a specific condition to try to change the inflammation and anti-inflammation levels that are appropriate for health. So if we are just taking preformed meaning made outside of the body, instead of letting the body regulate how much levels of EPA and DHA it actually needs, when you take it preformed like an algae and you throw it in there, the body is like, whoa, you're messing up my whole regulatory system. You're giving me way too much EPA than I need right now for my tissues, or way too much DHA that I need right now for my tissues. So what is better is to give the body the ALA at the top and let it convert down to all the different other 5 forms as it needs it, when it needs it, for each gender, for each tissue, for each specific disease state. That's what the body is programmed to do. And as a regulatory process through enzymes control, that's why it goes through these steps of enzymes, so that it can control how much is converted from ALA down to DHA. It can control the levels of each one of those 5 things. It's got a perfect system in there using epigenetics, genes controlling the production of the enzymes, and then the enzymes convert to each one. It's a beautiful, perfect regulatory system inside our bodies. And if we give it the first starting material, it can do all the work and bring you into perfect, harmonious balance, raising the levels or lowering them as you need them in the moment. And that's exactly what we should be doing. And that's why plant ALA only comes from plants. It's not found in fish. It's not found in those other sources out there like algae. Algae has 0 ALA in it. And that's what we should be feeding the body so it can regulate how much of all the different levels it needs. Now, the big question was, well, we know DHA is important for the brain. So let's jump into that because that's where the fear
I was going to bring up
comes in.
That's what Dr. Furman mentioned. And another question I had related to that, Dr. Furman mentioned in one of his videos that some people can't convert AHA very well, or ALA, sorry. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that, if that's a myth or.
Yes, it is.
If you could talk further about all that.
Yes. Okay, so let's look at DHA. So, and I don't fault the doctors who are making that assumption because it's based on previous research. But that previous research was based on individuals that weren't plant-based. So
Right.
when you change here, I'll show you a great study, the EPIC cohort. Now, this is a very popular study amongst vegans because it shows something that kind of blows that myth right out of the water. So the EPIC cohort showed that actually, when they measured DHA levels, that vegans had higher DHA levels than those consuming fish. Now, how is that possible? So what the researcher said, and I will read it right from the study. So this is a quote from the researchers of that study. The precursor product ratio, which is how much ratio of each of the omega-3s, from plant-derived ALA to circulating omega-3 fatty acids, was significantly greater in non-fish eaters than those who ate fish. So when you eat fish with that preformed DHA, the body says, whoa, where'd all that DHA come from? Let's shut down the enzymes because we don't need to produce any more endogenous DHA, right? So
Yep.
you're basically telling the body to stop what it's doing. You're interfering with its own production of DHA. So when you do that, it shuts down that. So when they saw fish eaters, they were like, oh, well, they should have better source of DHA because they're consuming DHA, whereas vegans are only consuming ALA. So what happens is when you eat fish, it shuts down those enzyme productions. It turns off that gene and your body doesn't convert well. So what they assumed was, oh, that means everybody doesn't convert DHA well. No, it's only those who are putting preformed sources in there. You're telling the body it doesn't need to produce its own. Just like steroids. If you take testosterone, exogenously preformed testosterone, and you put it in your body says, great, I don't need to make my own testosterone. Well, good, we're getting an outside source. Well, what happens is the body can actually shut down its own production of testosterone. And if you stay on steroids long enough, you can permanently shut down your own body's production of testosterone. The same with many other hormones, thyroid hormone. If you take thyroid hormone, the doctor will tell you, once you start this prescription, you can never go back. You will have to take this for the rest of your life because you will permanently shut down your own body's production. This is what happens when we use preformed sources of something that is not made by our body when our body has a system to make its own. You interfere, you throw that on the pile, the body says, okay, I don't need to make my own, shuts down its own endogenous processes, and now you screwed up the whole regulatory system. Now it doesn't know whether to lower or raise, and it has to try to adjust and adapt to these outside sources. For me, this research on omega-3 shows without a doubt that human beings are pre-set up. Look, we would not have an innate system that stays there to convert, to produce all these enzymes to convert and regulate. Our body wouldn't even create that system of conversion if all we needed was EPA and DHA from fish oil. This tells me that the only essential fatty acid being ALA is that humans are physiologically designed to consume plants and get their omega-3s from plants. This idea that we don't convert enough is bunk. And let me explain it to you. So there was some really great research, and there's a follow-up to this research, which I'm not allowed to talk about specifically yet because it's coming out later this year. So unpublished study is not allowed to be discussed, but I'm actually friends with some of the researchers on the study, and I can talk about it a little bit. But this was tracing. So what they said, okay, ALA being converted in the bloodstream is like minuscule, about 1%. So why is that? So this study was called, Is DHA synthesis from ALA sufficient to supply the adult brain? That's the name of the study, and you can look it up. So the current method showed DHA synthesis from ALA is typically about 1% of the oral ALA dose. So they thought, oh, that's too small. And some people even less than that, as little as 0.2%. So they said, oh, that's too small. That's not enough. People aren't converting ALA, you know. So they made all these assumptions based on that. What they were looking at was the conversion in the bloodstream. Now, if your body has ALA and it can be converted to any of those 5, and you might need some DHA now, maybe EPA later, why would it pre-convert it in the bloodstream if it can't retro-convert it? It can't convert it back to ALA. So there's an amazing study that showed unidirectional conversion rates. So when you start with ALA, as soon as you convert it, it can't go back to ALA. It's done. So why on earth would the body want to start converting that in the bloodstream when it doesn't have a need for it? It wouldn't do that. It saves it in its ideal precursor state because that ALA can be converted to all 5 of the rest of them anytime you need it. If there's no need, it's not going to do the conversion. So why on earth are we looking in the blood when the conversion is happening in the tissues? So then doctors, scientists said, okay, now we know that. Let's look at where are those things. Can we look at it in the tissues? Well, the only way you could do that was to biopsy the tissues. You can't go taking chunks of people, you know, tissues out of people, especially in the brain. You're not going to biopsy the brain just to measure their omega-3s.
Right.
That's pretty unethical. But what they can do is do a tracer. So what they did is actually traced. They put it's called isotope tracing, which is something that they can track through radiology, right? Radioisotope. So you take the ALA and you put an isotope in it, and that tracks it to see where it goes in the body, where it ends up, like in the brain, and then when is it actually used and metabolized. Well, here's the amazing thing about DHA that they found. When they did this tracer, they found the vast majority, up to 80% of the conversion was happening in the tissues specifically themselves, not the bloodstream. So this whole concept that DHA converts only a little bit is just bogus. It's not true at all.
Yep.
It's just they were looking at it in the wrong place. They were looking at it in the bloodstream, not in the tissues. Now that we have actual tracer data, we can see it's being metabolized. ALA is being metabolized in the tissues. But get this, okay, so DHA requirements for the human brain are about 2.4 to 3.8 milligrams per day. Milligrams. We're taking grams of this stuff a day. So when you take ALA, up to 70% or more of that is actually burned up in the body and used for calories. So why on earth, if omega-3s are so important and that we're not getting conversion, why would the body go and take something that it needs lots of to try to get that DHA and just burn it up for calories? Why would it do that? That would make absolutely no sense. That would be like eating all your food and knowing you're not going to have food for another year, eating all your food in one day.
Right.
No, the body's not going to do that. That would be idiotic. But what the body does is take that ALA and store it. So here's something cool that they found out. They found out that the human body can store up to 20 to 50 grams of DHA in fat tissues. Grams, right? Not milligrams. That's 1,000 milligrams per gram. 20 to 50. If that's the case and your brain needs 2.4 milligrams a day, your fat cells could be holding 22 years worth of DHA.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And we're stressing that you have to take these things. No, our body is extremely efficient at storing and converting when it needs to, and then holding on to that DHA for in the fat cells. I mean, it's just absurd that we're making these assumptions. Now, most of these assumptions were based on old data that was only on omnivores. So that was wrong to begin with. Then they based it on bloodstream, and that was wrong as well. Now we know it's metabolized in tissues, and not only that, it's only metabolized as needed. So if your body only needs 2.4 milligrams, it's not going to convert a bunch of ALA to DHA because it's probably got some sitting in your fat stores already. So one, it doesn't really need it. And then two, it can take that ALA and store it in the fat tissues. So it's got even more ready to be converted to DHA. So it doesn't really need it. So why would you see conversion happening in the bloodstream to DHA if there's no need and there's plenty in storage? You wouldn't do that. The body would not do that. That would be stupid. That would be totally inefficient. And one thing I've learned about physiology is our body is extremely efficient with nutrition and with calories. It is extraordinarily. If, for example, you don't use enough of your calories, the body will store them. Great, that's body fat. That's what it's supposed to do. If your body doesn't need some fat-soluble nutrition, the body will store it in body fat. So some body fat's actually not bad. This is storehouses for our omega-3s. So you don't want to get too low in that because then you're actually depleting, you're actually burning up your omega-3s for use for calories. And that's not what you want to do. And that's why our brain is a very fatty deposited brain. If anybody ever calls you a fathead, tell them thank you because it means you're a lot smarter. But that's one of the reasons why our body has a lot of brain has a lot of fatty tissues. It's storing nutrition so that it needs, when it needs it, it's right there to drop it into the bucket when and where it needs it. So the big thing is we need the top precursor so it can convert down to all of them, which is ALA, which is only found in plants. The body can store it for a longer period of time. So just getting a sufficient amount of ALA or SDA, which are the top two, if you can get those top two, they can convert down to all of the rest of the omega-3s that your body needs.
I haven't heard of SDA. What kind of foods have SDA?
Very few. Hemp has a little bit of SDA, but the highest source of SDA that we know of on the planet is Ahiflower. Ahiflower, when you combine ALA, SDA, and LA, which are the two essential fatty acids, right? LA, the omega-6, and ALA, you combine that with SDA and GLA, which are all four anti-inflammatory, then you have Ahiflower, basically. Ahiflower is the richest source of those four anti-inflammatory omega-3s and 6s of any plant on the planet. Flax does not contain SDA, does not contain GLA. Chia does not contain SDA or GLA.
How about walnuts?
What's that?
Walnuts?
Walnuts are a good source of ALA, no SDA or GLA. And so really there are few sources of GLA out there, like black currants are good, or evening primrose have GLA, but they're very low in ALA and LA, the two essential fatty acids. So it's good on the GLA, which is great for women, hormone production, anti-inflammatory. GLA is anti-inflammatory. Now, a lot of people say, oh, watch out for the high LA omega-6 because it's pro-inflammatory. Okay, let's set the record straight here. LA, which is linolenic acid, which is the omega-6. Remember, it's an essential fatty acid, so our body has to get some of that in there for required sources, and it only comes from plants. So LA is anti-inflammatory. It's only when it converts down to arachidonic acid does it become pro-inflammatory. Now here's the important part. It can convert to DGLA, which is anti-inflammatory. So LA or omega-6 can be in an LA state and be anti-inflammatory. It can be in a DGLA state, be anti-inflammatory. Only when it's converted down to arachidonic acid does it become pro-inflammatory. Now, most people say, oh, then too much omega-6 will cause pro-inflammation. Well, there may be a little bit of truth to that, but our body, remember, has that regulatory system. It says, okay, I've got LA omega-6. I won't convert it down to arachidonic acid unless I need it. Remember that epigenetics is controlling the amount of enzymes that can do the conversion from one to the other. So if your body doesn't need arachidonic acid, our body has a system to make sure it doesn't convert it. Turn off that gene, no production of the enzyme. The LA cannot convert to arachidonic acid. So it controls endogenously. Now, animals convert LA to arachidonic acid when they stress. Guess what we're doing to farm-raised animals? Yeah, they're arachidonic acids through the roof. And then we consume that, and now it's preformed arachidonic acid, pro-inflammatory arachidonic acid. And you pop that into the body from eating animal products, meat, dairy, eggs, etc., chicken, fish. Now you've got arachidonic acid, pro-inflammatory arachidonic acid, coming into the system. The body says, I can't do anything about that. It's already been all the way converted down to arachidonic acid. I can't convert it back up. It's unidirectional. Right. So it's, I hear this thing about, oh, plants, they have lots of pro-inflammatory omega-6. I'm like, that's not how the body works. The body regulates pro-inflammation and anti-inflammation. As a matter of fact, we build muscle through arachidonic acid. When you work out, the body stores arachidonic acid all in around the muscle. So when you squeeze a muscle and you stress it, it releases arachidonic acid into the bloodstream, which signals the body to come over and heal and repair this muscle. Our muscle doesn't grow without arachidonic acid mechanism. So that pro-inflammation is totally necessary. We wouldn't have muscle growth without it. So pro-inflammation is not bad. Excessive inflammation is bad. So, but the body has a way to regulate that anti-inflammation, pro-inflammation. Too much, after you work out, pro-inflammation. Okay, it sends a signal, go build and repair the muscle. After that, let's bring down the inflammation so then it converts more to anti-inflammatory DGLA and LA. And then that brings down the inflammation. Same we do with the immune function. The immune function, the innate, the original thing is attack all the virus like COVID in our lungs, fills our lungs up with water and pro-inflammatory states, but it kills the virus. Then right after that, our adaptive immune system comes in and lowers that pro-inflammation. So you need pro-inflammation, and then you need anti-inflammation after it. What's the problem is when we're eating animal products every single day, we're adding inflammation, 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 more arachidonic acid over and over and over again. And the body's just like, I can't keep up with this. You're killing me, So that's where the real issue comes in. It's not, the culprit is not omega-6. That is regulated endogenously by the body. The culprit is that omega-6 that is coming from animal products because it's already converted down to arachidonic acid where it's pro-inflammatory and the body can't do anything about it except try to put the fire out with more plants.
Right.
So
very interesting.
This is the misconception, and I really wanted to try to get people to understand, because this myth that omega-6 is bad for you is poppycock. It's essential fat. There's only 2 essential fats that our body actually needs: omega-3 ALA and omega-6 LA. Those are required by the body so it can do its proper regulation of pro and anti-inflammation states. It's all irregular. We need some pro-inflammation to signal, to heal, repair, to kill things. And then we need some anti-inflammation. And what we need to do is give the body the precursors so it can regulate its own amounts of everything, including DHA.
Right.
So, a lot of this fear, though, I believe there are some researchers out there that are being paid by fish oil companies and algae oil companies to look past this evidence, because the evidence is pretty clear. Look, if I'm, just a dude, a vegan out there can see all these studies and put this together, then surely scientists and doctors and people with degrees should be seeing this, and they're not. And the only reason I can think of is why they're not is because, one, they're not looking for it, because they've based it all on an assumption that you have to have fish or algae oil. You do not. That they're better. They are not. That they interfere with our own body's endogenous regulation. So why would you introduce them to someone? But that was based on the fear of that we're not getting enough. remember the fear of protein, right? As soon as you became vegan, what is the first thing they ask you?
Yeah, always, always. Where do you get
Always,
your
where do you get
protein?
our protein?
Yep.
Because there's such high amounts of protein in animal products, they assume that's better. We now know that's worse, that
Right.
lower amounts of protein are actually better. And not only the lower amounts, but the type of protein. So that's really important too as well. When you look at the methionine and cysteine that is in a protein, gram for gram, plants are lower. Methionine feeds cancer cells. There's about 16 different forms of cancer, breast, prostate, some of the major killers of cancer in our things. They are called methionine dependent cancers. The more methionine you put in your body, the more you are feeding cancer cells to grow.
Interesting.
And if you can consume 40 grams of animal protein and feed cancer cells, or 40 grams of plant protein and not feed cancer cells, which do you think is a better option? It's not the protein. It's the type of protein. It's what's in that protein. That one comes with cholesterol. That one stimulates TMAO production. That one has NEUGC5 production. Those are different proteins than the plant ones. The plants do not have that high methionine, do not have that cholesterol, do not stimulate TMAO production. It's so clear that the proteins themselves are different, and it's not the protein or even the amount of protein per se. They've put people on really high amounts of plant protein and found zero incidence. The same amount of high protein, 400% increase in cancer, 500% increase in diabetes on the exact same amounts, calorie for calorie, gram for gram, high protein diet. Plants, zero increase, none. I mean, this is in the research, it's in the studies. There is a difference between animal protein and plant protein, and the plant proteins are that they don't cause the disease states. So I hate when they demonize, like, oh, plant omega-3s don't do X. That's not true anymore. And it was never true, but now we understand that it's not true and why. Same with the animal proteins. They assumed they were better. Actually, they're worse. And the same with the omega-3s we're now understanding. These plant-based sources are actually the better path because our system is already set up and designed to regulate them when we put them in. It's so clear. The research is there and it's amazing. It took a lot of time for me. It's been for like last 5 years. I've been really dissecting this because there's gotta be proof that this is it. But right now, just in the last year, especially, like the tracer programs, the tracer studies that have shown once they actually trace where that goes. Look, so when they did the measuring, they found that ingested ALA conversion was about 1%, right? With the new conversion rates, it's about 3 times that when they're looking at that. But remember, that means it's 3 times higher when it's coming from the tissues. So we weren't even looking at that. So at 3 times higher, and we now know that the brain is only about 0.1 to 0.2% of what we need. We're getting way more than we need just by consuming healthy amounts of ALA. And this is what's more funny is that it can be stored in the body for up to a year.
I'm just going to ask you how long. That's amazing.
So, and that's just based on their assumption because the radioisotopes may not even track it that far because it could be doing other things or be used for other things. So, I mean, it's crazy what the assumptions were based on fear. And I'm gonna have to say this, but based on people and businesses trying to sell fish and algae.
I'm sure part of it's that.
It's a profit motive. Look, they don't want this information coming out. Fish oil is a $2.4 billion industry in this country alone.
Exactly.
They don't want to lose this money. They don't want this information out. So I really appreciate you taking the time and letting me have some time with your folks to get this information out there.
We need to get we need to get it out there.
Because it's fear-based, and it's fear-based for profit. And that's the worst kind of fear-based there is. When you're profiting off of somebody using their fears and getting them to consume something that is actually detrimental to them and interfering with their natural body's processes.
Right.
That's horrible. And it's got to be called out. And I don't care what kind of hate I get from those industries. I'm going to keep calling it out because it's the right thing to do for people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think more plant-based doctors will be on board soon.
I think so too, because the research is, especially with this new study coming out, I think around September, October, it'll just blow the lid off this. This will make it a moot point. But it'll also mean that we should not be taking algae. And I know a lot of vegans out there are taking algae DHA because they feel.
Yeah, I was one of them before I heard your video.
So,
And
that's a shame. There's an interesting study, I think I can pull it up right here, that showed, yeah, here it is. This one was also Cambridge University, showed 285 females took 400 milligrams of algae DHA in a double-blind placebo-controlled trial for 50 days. They found that at the end of that 50 days of taking 400 milligrams of algae DHA, they recently acquired information that was more likely to be forgotten than those who did not consume. So their memory declined with the consumption of DHA. And the active capsules were from microalgae DHA.
Really interesting, yeah.
So, I mean, that's sad. Well, they looked at the mechanisms, and this is on animals. And look, to be clear, I do not support animal testing at all as a vegan, obviously. But the data is out there, so it's important to test it. And of course, animal studies don't always replicate in humans, but it just reaffirms what that previous study in humans was showing. And that too much DHA can cause a halt to EPA conversion, leading to acute levels of EPA, which then cause brain dysfunction. Yep. So it was called a study called acute EPA-induced learning and memory impairment in mice. So they're even talking about once you take that DHA, you could be overloading the system, causing a pileup or backup of EPA, and then that EPA actually causing detrimental effects, causing high blood pressure, causing the body to brain dysfunction, causing memory impairment. I'm like, let the body do its thing.
Exactly. Absolutely.
What it needs, and let it regulate its own amounts. For us to think, hey, I need more testosterone, just throw some testosterone in there and think that doesn't have an effect on the body, you could permanently cut off your own body's production of testosterone. No, that's not the right approach. The right approach is to use natural herbs, exercise, and other attributes to help your body increase its own production of testosterone.
Right.
And that's what you want to do. The same. Give the two plant-based essential fatty acids, omega-6 LA and omega-3 ALA, and let the body do the conversion and regulation all on its own. When you take those preformed sources and just drop it in the body, boom. You just blow up the whole thing. And you could be actually harming yourself and not even knowing it, thinking you're doing the right thing, thinking you're doing good. So
that's why I stopped taking it as soon as you did the video, because I don't want to do the wrong thing.
Right. And look, I get where some of those doctors are coming from. They're basing their information on the previous research. And if I did that, I would be saying take DHA too as well. But the research was wrong. It was based on assumptions that were wrong. And now that we have new research, we have to update what we're telling people so that they are doing the right thing for the body. And look, it makes so much more sense. I felt right from the beginning when I turned vegan, like this is the right thing. This is right with my body. All my health methods improved. My body fat dropped, everything. You know how your body physiology changed. Look at our microbiome. Our microbiome feeds on fiber, polyphenols, oligosaccharides, and resistant starches. We're the only sources of those four. Plants. So our entire good microbiome feeds on nothing but plants. What the hell should we be putting in our guts?
Exactly.
mean, it's just so freaking clear. So it didn't make sense that for somehow we should be eating fish. Look, human beings have lived far away from oceans and we're fine. You know, there was no way they were eating fish 40 miles inland. There was no way living up in the Himalayas that they were eating fish. There's no fish in the mountains. Come on.
Right.
There's no algae. Human beings were never eating algae. That's not real. This is based on fear and based on marketing. And now that we have the research, it's the plants, the plants all along. And now we have the research to say, yes, it is the plants we should be consuming to get our omega-3s, just like human beings have been doing. There's amazing research on Inuits, which are what we call Eskimos, native tribes. Yeah. Now, what they did was they had no plants to eat because they're living in tundra, right? Where there's no green growth for the vast majority of the year. Well, interestingly, because they were only eating fish, their genetics actually adapted. So what was cool is they found that if you had genes passed on from Inuit, your body was picking up on that and could utilize the DHA and EPA from fish a little better. Still not perfect. You're still not getting the ALA, SDA, and ETA. And I'll talk about that in a second. But it helped them survive. Now, what's interesting is after they stopped doing that and ate mostly a plant-based diet, it reverted right back. So what that tells me is that human beings are innately meant to be on a plant-based diet. We have the setup already there. And if we eat an animal-based diet, our body will try to squeeze itself into that. But as soon as you start eating plants, it goes right back to the proper state of conversion rate. So that tells me we are permanently supposed to be plant eatings, but our body out of survival can adapt temporarily to that and not well. Remember, Inuits have a lifespan of 40 to 50 years. So that's not something I would want to trade off. But at least it got them to 40 to 50 years. That's better than dying, right? So here's an interesting study, and one of my favorites because it really calls out why ALA, SDA, and ETA. Remember, those are the top three in the 6 conversion. EPA starts at number 4, then DPA, then DHA down at the bottom. So the top 3. Remember, if you're taking EPA at number 4, you're not getting those top 3 omega-3s, right? ALA, SDA, and ETA. So the scientists said, okay, but are they important? Are they necessary? Are they required? So here's the study. I'll read the title to you for any of those who want to look it up online. Determinants of Fluid Intelligence in Healthy Aging. Omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acid status and frontal parietal cortex structure. So they're looking at our brain centers, right? Our cognitive centers where we do most of our thinking, our processing. So the results of this study showed that the mediation analysis, and I'm reading a direct quote from the study, so you don't see me talking off the top of my head, was linked to fluid intelligence and total gray matter volume with the highest amounts of ALA, SDA, and ETA. Not DHA. Remember, all this thing about DHA for the brain, DHA for the brain, right? The ones with the highest ALA, SDA, and ETA, which you can only get from plants. Remember, if you're taking preformed EPA or DHA from fish or algae, you're not getting any of those 3. And this has not only increased your intelligence, but increased the amount of gray brain matter. Your actual physical brain was bigger. Had more volume to it over time. And I'm like, oh my God, we know that our brain shrinks, so to speak, over time as we age. Well, this shows us just the opposite. It shows us that our brain was shrinking because we're not giving it enough ALA, SDA, and ETA, which preserves the gray brain matter, which preserves our ability to think and be intelligent, fluid intelligence. It's our working brain. And I'm like, oh my God, ALA, SDA, and ETA cannot come from animals. It's not found in fish or milk or meat. It's the EPA
Right.
and DHA down at the bottom. It's the bottom three, not the top three. And this showed greater intelligence and greater brain matter. I don't know about you, but intelligence and having my brain intact by the time I'm older in life is pretty important to me. And the
Exactly.
fact that you
Exactly.
cannot get these from animals, it's impossible, and that they only come from plants, and that Ahiflower is the highest in ALA and SDA, which converts to ETA, of all of the plants. I'm like, I'm sticking with Ahiflower.
Yeah. Yep. Amazing.
So that's why I went with Ahiflower. When I first found the research on Ahiflower, I started talking to the guys at NCI way before this, and I said, this is amazing. And it won the Nexty Award, you can see it there, for best ingredient of the year out of all of the supplements in the entire country. And I was the first to launch it.
If you could send me a link too, I'll include it with the video as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And I'll send you the links to the studies too. So if people want to look at the studies too as well, it's just
Definitely.
amazing research out there supporting this. And it together, all the research really forms a very clear narrative. But you have to understand the omega-3s and omega-6s, understand our physiology, and then really converge those two with the latest research. Some of this research has only come out just this year.
Right.
So this is new stuff. So I don't blame any of the doctors. If they haven't happened to read these studies yet, they won't know. So I get it.
Exactly.
And I'm not blaming them. I'm not pointing fingers or anything, but I really think this new information needs to get out there because there are so many vegans out there out of fear are taking DHA supplementation.
They are.
And to me, I think that's doing the wrong thing, and it's interfering with your body's processes when you could be doing so much better.
I feel great without it. I mean, I don't miss it.
I have never taken a EPA or DHA supplement ever in my entire life, and I've been vegan for 36 years, and my brain seems to be functioning at a pretty high level, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, this has been very helpful. Real quick, if you could mention also the DHA, I'm sorry, vitamin D3 you were talking about. Because I think, I mean, I'd like to buy it myself, but I'd like my audience to hear about it too.
Yeah, so when I was looking at vitamin D3, I had a little bit of concerns because I was really thankful when they had a vegan true D3, because before that, supplemental D for vegans was from mushrooms, which was D2. Now, we know D2 does not convert as well. It's about 80% less effective as D3. And it doesn't maintain in the system. So the body gets rid of it very quickly. So it doesn't have any lasting power because it's, so there were big concerns of it. And there's a research that showed that D2 doesn't even help muscle strength at all, where D3, 20% increase in muscle strength. So, okay, D3 is far superior to D2, but there weren't really good sources of D3 up until just recently. So the sources for D3 were lichen, which I've been using because it's the only D3, vegan D3 we could get, right? And there were some from mushrooms, but lichen and mushrooms are both fungi, and they actually convert D2 naturally in the state, but if you subject them to bright sunlight, they can start producing D3. So they can switch over from D2 to D3. But if you take the things and you try to extract them, the mushroom extract or the lichen extract, you're probably getting a little bit of a mix of D2 and D3. So D2 in some studies has suggested that D2 can actually interfere with D3. So I'm like, okay, the vegan D3s that are available from mushrooms or lichen are okay. They're better than D2 and they're the best that we've got for vegans. But I was like, God, there's gotta be a source that gives pure D3. And I found it. And working with this company before they even launched the product again, and was blessed to be one of the very first out there with it, which is a vegan D3 from organic algae. So one, it's organic, where most of the mushroom and lichen is not organic, which is great. Two, it's 100% pure D3. It's actually a crystal of D3. So there's no D2, there's no other impurities, there's no other stuff that could inhibit its absorption or anything like that. It is 100% pure D3, and it's organic. So I was really excited to, bring this out there so more people, especially within the vegan community, could have a pure organic vegan D3 as opposed to what's out there. So
Yeah, I love that idea.
yeah, so really excited about that. And again, that's what I look for. And lentine, the highest source of not only essential amino acids and branched chain amino acids of any plant, but also the richest source of nutrition, total nutrition, higher than moringa, flax, chia, hemp, all of those. Ahiflower, higher in total omega-3 and omega-6 than flax, chia, hemp, sacha enchi, all of them, you know. So I'm out there looking for the absolute best sources of plants. And yeah, they're a little bit more expensive. So if you're a broke ass vegan like I used to be, I get it. I'm trying to make them as cheap as possible so more people can afford them. But as you help us grow, we can bring the prices down, supply and demand, right? But what first I wanted to do is to find the best omega-3. I found it with Ahiflower. It was the first in the market, won the Nexty Award. Find the best protein, found it. Lentine won the Nexty Award in 2018 for best supplement of the year. D3, found a pure D3 in organic state. These are the absolute best that nature has to offer, best sources. Even our Cell Block 80, the best, most incredible, this cactus flower alters and helps regulate and balance hormones 8 to 10 times more effectively than any other herb on the market. It's phenomenal. So the best in class in hormone optimization, best in class in omegas, best in class in protein, best in class in superfood, and best in class in D3. And then talk about the research is why, because I used to work at Vitamin Shop, and I'd stand in the store and see, you know, half of the stuff is for health promoting, and then half of the sports nutrition was all nasty stuff full of chemicals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I would talk to people, and they put me in the worst store in Florida out of all the stores in the Vitamin Shop to try to help it out. Well, I more than doubled the sales in less than 12 months. So the owner of Vitamin Shop, right, you know, $500 million company, flies down to my store and says, "What the hell are you doing? You've increased sales more than anybody else in the company." And I said, "I don't sell." And he looked at me with the weirdest look. And I said, "I educate people. And that empowers them to make the best choice for them. I'm not trying to get them to buy something. I'm showing them what the options are, what the advantages are, what the science is, what the health benefits are, and empowers them to make the best decision for themselves." That's a different way. And that's how I try to approach this brand too. I go out and get these best of all plants available, make them available, and then try to educate people as why they're so different, why they're beneficial. And then I leave that decision up to people of whether you know it's right for them. I don't want you to buy any of my products. What I prefer is that you choose the best things for you. And now I'm just trying to give you the information so that you can make that best choice.
Yeah, I love that. And I hope my audience will check it out because yeah, I highly trust your products, and I'm gonna check out the D3 myself.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm glad I found it. It's a big upgrade from what was available in the market for vegans, and same with Ahiflower. It's huge, and it breaks my heart a little bit to go onto the vegan boards and see, and 90% of the people there saying, "Oh, I take algae DHA," and I'm like, And I try to comment, and I know people say, "Oh, you own a company, you're just trying to sell stuff." I get that. I totally understand where that comes from. There's a lot of marketers out there that do that. And I'm like, no, if you just know the science. So thank you so much for letting me talk about the science, because I think once people know the science, they're going to make better choices for them, for their health, and for themselves.
Oh, definitely. And thank you for joining us too. And yep, when you send the links, I'll definitely add it to the video as well.
Perfect.